Tounde Yessoufou could be the best prospect in the 2026 NBA draft after Cam Boozer, AJ Debonsa, and Darren Peterson. Lock in now, and we'll tell you why.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On NBA Draft with no ceilings. Thanks as always for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Make sure to download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? It's game time. As always, I'm Albert Ghim with my co-host Corey Tulaba. Corey, we should let our listeners know because they're in the know with us. You're a year older, a year wiser. Just want to know how you're feeling, what's going on, and how'd you celebrate your latest birthday?
Yes, thank you. I kept it pretty chill, just kind of hung out with the fam. We went out to a place on Long Island called Dirty Taco, which is a Japanese Mexican fusion. It's unbelievable. There's like 4 locations on the island. So, fun music, good food, Korean barbecue, taco, so many tacos, queso, cheese, guacamole. The work. So it was fun, and I'm officially kicking 40's door down now. I'm the countdown is on as I celebrate the big 3-9.
There's so much I can talk about there. I love the combination of Japanese Mexican fusion, but then also you got a Korean taco.
Yeah.
So a lot going on there. But also, Corey, you are an absolute connoisseur when it comes to queso. You love queso more than
I love myself some queso.
But Corey, we're not here today to talk about queso, although we are here to celebrate your birthday. Happy 39th. We're really excited to be here today because, Corey, we're talking about Tounde Yessoufou, a guy that we got to see in person at the Nike Hoop Summit, a guy that actually, I think, Corey, both of us are very excited to watch this season play at Baylor. And so, Corey, if you can, obviously, for our listeners, if you've been with us for a couple of weeks now, you know how the structure of our podcast goes. We're going to jump into the offense first. And so, Corey, before we do that, give us the breakdown, give us the essential facts about Tounde.
Yeah. So, is it Benin? Benin?
Yes.
Benin, he's originally from Benin. He played at St. Joseph High School in California, where he holds the high school scoring record for career scoring at 3,462 points. He will be playing at Baylor. He is a shooting guard, measured at 6'5¼ in shoes, 216 with an 8'6" standing reach and a 6'8.5" wingspan at the Nike Hoop Summit. He is a little bit older. He will be 20.1 years old on draft night after his freshman season. Synergy didn't have his full high school stats. They only had 4 games from his senior year. The stats are, a little cooked, but via Cali Drafts, who has a AAU database, he did have a 14.1 BPM in the EYBL, which was second behind Cam Boozer. So two-way player who impacts both sides of the ball. He was a McDonald's All-American and a member of the world team at the Nike Hoop Summit. And he was the guy at both of those events that really, really popped to me outside of, the main attractions. I was vaguely familiar with his game coming into the McDonald's All-American game, and he was the number one guy where I was like, oh man, that dude. So exciting player with a really fun, backstory that I'm sure we'll touch on. But somebody I'm really excited about coming into this year.
Yeah, Corey, absolutely. I mean, at the Nike Hoop Summit, one of our takeaways was that we were extremely impressed with Tounde, whether it was during practices, scrimmages, and then the actual game, the intensity. For me, one of the marquee skills with him is his intensity. I think he plays really, really hard, and he plays a ferocious brand of basketball, is how I like to put it. And I think with him, Corey, we're going to get into a little bit of his offense now. And I think a good way to kind of put him in perspective as an offensive player is that he is not a finished product when it comes to his offensive game.
Mm-hmm.
Although, Corey, for me, both in person and through the film dive, I did walk away more impressed with his offense than I thought I was going to be, because I think sometimes when you look at a player of his kind of build, right? A guy who is very athletic, who is built very strong. As you mentioned, Corey, he's a little bit older, so he has a little bit more, he's more mature in his physique with his strength. And that strength piece is something that I want to ask you about a little bit later. But Corey, I think his offensive game, whether it was his shooting, his feel, his handle, the way that he attacks the rim, just like there are a lot of different facets to his game, but still a little rough around the edges. And I think
Yeah.
there is a refinement that needs to happen both in college and on the next level, where it's hard to like really put a clear ceiling on what his offensive game is going to look like. But it is intriguing because it is so rough around the edges. And there can be, I mean, the type of players you might get from the type of molding you can do with a player like this is extremely exciting. So, Corey, if you can speak a little bit to what you saw with his offensive game and where you think some of his strengths lie.
Yeah, well, he's strong, 216 as a freshman. He's long, he's super athletic, and he likes to play in chaos. And a lot of that chaos oftentimes is him actually creating the chaos. But he likes getting out in transition. I think he is a really, really good athlete. I'm still trying to figure out if he is creeping towards that like upper tier, because there were times at the Nike Hoop Summit where I was like, I think he's got more bounce than maybe I'm giving him credit for. But really, really strong, likes, loves to play out, running the wings, running the floor, grabbing and going. I think that he is an improving shooter. And I think that if you look at his like EYBL high school film, and then you got to see what we saw at Hoop Summit, both behind the scenes and in the games, I think his shot is really coming along, and it's something that I feel like is maybe not going to be like the first thing listed as far as his strengths go, but is not going to be listed amongst his weaknesses either. I think, when where he gets in trouble is when he doesn't keep the game simple as a creator. I think when he's at his best, and I think he mostly operates this way, he kind of faces up, triple threat, jab step, shimmy, keeping it simple, 3 dribbles before he gets into his shot. And he likes operating out of the, in that little in-between area. But there are times where I think the more he does, the more you see kind of like where he needs that refinement with his handle, specifically with his left hand, I think, when guys are really trying to make him like improvise and do stuff. But at the same time, I think that like I love how low he gets when he's like changing pace or like going into a combo. So there is a lot there to work with the handle. Like I think, when we compare him, he's going to get compared to VJ Edgecombe as the successor, in this lineage of Baylor guards, this heater that Scott Drew has been on. And I think that his handle is more creative and tighter than VJ's is at the same point in their development. An underrated thing, he does little things, like he set, like in his high school tape, like he would set screens and operate as like the screener a lot, and he'd make contact. Like he's just strong. He's confident. He likes playing out of hang hezzies when he's getting into his shot, finishing, smooth transition athlete, good feel for avoiding contact using like Euro steps and decels, but also is willing to go and create contact and get to the line. He's got good body control, willing cutter. I think the biggest area for me, and I want to get your perspective, is I think his playmaking is a little bit of a question mark. I think it's good in transition when he has room and he can see the whole floor. He passes with zip. I don't think he's a bad decision maker, but like he had a negative assist turnover ratio in the 12 games that Synergy had for EYBL in 2024. I think he needs to do a better job of just like leveraging his playmaking to make his teammates better.
Yeah.
But I think that's my biggest area.
No, Corey, I think everything that you said is so solid. Some of the major takeaways from what you said that I want to follow up on, right hand heavy for sure. And that's something that he's really got to work on, both with his handle, but also with his finishing as well. Something that I really enjoyed about his game, just aesthetically was fun to watch. This man loves a Euro step. And I really like that you mentioned that, because he's good at it too, though. Like the way
Yeah.
that he sets it up, the way that he gets guys leaning the wrong way with it, it's really dynamic and also explosive as well. And I think that's really meaningful for him. His finishing, the way that he gets downhill is really impressive. I think he's got a really good first step. And then he's one of these guys where we talk about this a lot with some of these stronger drivers, Corey, is that when he gets that step on you, it's really hard to recover because of
Mhm.
his strength and the
Yeah.
width that he plays with as
He
he's
gets
getting
into
down
he
low.
gets into guys' bodies and
Right.
creates that
Right.
instead of letting the defender dictate.
Bingo. It's almost like he creates a wall behind him with the way that he uses his body and strength to keep guys either on his hip or behind. Although with that, I did feel like there were times when he was attacking the rim, he'd get a little tunnel vision-y,
Oh, yeah.
where, yeah, and so that's something that's going to be an area of growth for him, right? Because Corey, to your point, I don't think he's a bad passer. I think he's just got to learn to breathe in that space a little
Mm.
bit more as he's attacking the rim and going downhill. And so that's something that, of course, we don't think he's ever going to be Luka Doncic with that. However, even incremental growth in that, I think, will be really effective for him because of the type of driver that he is and the type of gravity that he's going to pull in because of his explosiveness. Corey, I love that you mentioned the VJ thing, because I think objectively VJ Edgecombe is more explosive than he is, but I don't think he's far away, because I do want to reference, Corey, when we were at the Nike Hoop Summit, we went to the Nike facility for one of the world team practices. And I think you and I both had this on video and like photos of it, but he went up, they were doing transition drills and he went up for a dunk, and it just looked like he literally looked like a pterodactyl, just kind of like flying in for an absolute disgusting dunk. And because we were so close on the floor with them, we could feel the power of that dunk, both on the basket and then on the ground when he landed. And I think there's a power and gravity to his game that I think will impact college defenders in a way that is different from maybe other people in his class. And I think, Corey, to your point earlier, I think a lot of that can be attributed to maybe him being a little bit older, a little bit stronger, but there is that combination of him being relentless when attacking the rim, him being unafraid, his willingness to embrace contact and play through contact, I think is a really special thing for him that I think is going to be important to watch him leverage that in the college game. The last point I want to make to follow up on you, Corey, is the shooting, right? I think ultimately where I came away with it is I felt like off the dribble, the mechanics got a little loose sometimes, and it could be for a lot of different reasons. Maybe he's getting sped up a little bit, maybe not as confident, but I did feel like overall, both through the eye test, seeing him in person, but also on film, that I think it's going to be a strength of his. And later when we get into his comp, I have a guy that reminds me of him where with Tounde, he'll never be, I don't think he'll ever be like a 43% three-point shooter. There are very few of those people. But I do think it could be a strength of his where he could be a very good shooter and maybe not an excellent shooter. And that'll be important because of what he can do, as we mentioned, as a driver, as even, and also another thing, Corey, even off ball, I thought he was really impressive at times as like a vertical lob threat as well as a guard. And I think that's special too. But before we go on and on and on about his offense, which is very dynamic, and there is a lot to talk about, we do want to switch over to his defense. But before we do, we have a word from Gametime. Guys, college football is right around the corner. It's back. And honestly, there's nothing better than the energy of tailgating and being in the stands with your fellow fans. The only downside sometimes is trying to get tickets. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices that jump at checkout. The list goes on. And that's why for me, I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And I think for me, I've personally really loved using Gametime before. And this is one of those things where like some people pretend, but I use the Gametime app a lot. And as a person who lives here in Southern California, who wants to catch a Yankee game, MLB playoffs right around the corner, right? Whenever they're in town playing the Angels, playing the Dodgers, I go on the Gametime app. And one thing I really enjoyed about the Gametime app is just how easy the app is to use. And also the fact that if I click on a ticket, it'll literally show me what my view of the field is going to look like. And I think that's a really special thing that Gametime does, creating an easy user experience while also being realistic with us in terms of what we're actually buying. And so when it comes to the Gametime app, it's a great app, a great tool for you to find tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKED, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. All right, Corey, we're going to get into another aspect of Tounde Yessoufu's game that there's going to be a lot for us to talk about, right?
Mhm.
And it's weird because usually, high school guys, we always put that disclaimer, hard to judge, high school tape, blah, blah, blah. But the thing with Tounde, and we saw this in person once again, and we have this game, right, Corey? Like every time we mention Nike Hoops, some of you got to drink.
Yeah.
But with Tounde, the thing with him is when we saw him in person, it just felt like he treated anytime he was on the basketball court as if it was game 7 in the NBA finals. It's something where even in the post-game press conference, Corey, he talked about his experience as an immigrant, him, coming over to the States, the experience and having that desperation and the hunger to be great because he knows the sacrifices that people, his family and the people around him had to make for him to be at this point in his basketball journey. It was really beautiful to hear. But Corey, we see that in the defensive tape with him.
Mhm.
We saw that in person. There is a hunger, a tenacity, a desire to defend at a high level. But I do want to be clear, he's not a perfect defender, right? Very few high school defenders are. But with Tounde, there are some really nice skills and stuff for us to discuss. So Corey, if you can give us your overarching kind of takeaway and how you feel about Tounde as a defender, both for, the college level and the NBA as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like homeboy guards, like rent is due. Like he is out there busting his butt. And I mentioned it in the offensive segment, like that he likes to play in chaos. Part of that, and I specifically wrote in my notes, I need your cornerback comp. He's so good in the passing lanes, both with anticipating it and just getting out in the open floor, the timing of it all. It feels devastating. Is there anybody football related, because I know you like the cross sport comps a lot of times, that you kind of feel gave you that kind of off ball cornerback-esque impression?
Corey, so for me right now, obviously Jet fan, I love my guy Sauce Gardner, but I actually want to turn it on you and give you someone that you're not expecting, because he's a guy that, maybe Corey, I actually don't know if you like
Jason
comic books. No. Wow, I was not expecting that at all. In my notes, Corey, I actually had Craven the Hunter with what I had in my notes, and I wanted to kind of give you like a different spin. But sorry. Okay, so Sauce Gardner, a guy like that for the Jets, I love. A lot of good corners in the game, but yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Number 31. No, I love how he creates so much defense to offense in the passing lanes, using his length, and he's just a ball hawk in that respect. But then on the ball too, man, he is low in his stance. He's physical. He is in your shirt. He's pushing you to a side, so he's really just making you uncomfortable. And then if you leave the ball out in front of him, those quick hands are going to lead to pokeaways. Again, he's going to start the break in that regard. I mean, and his ground coverage is super impressive as well. And, my favorite play when we were at the Nike Hoop Summit in general was seeing him guard AJ DeBonsa in the post. And it started out in semi-transition. Michael Brown hit a skip to AJ in the corner. Tounde is rotating over, sliding as the low man to kind of stop the drive. Closes out short because he knows AJ isn't going to let it fly.
Yeah.
AJ comes into him, tries bullying him in the post, and he's giving up a few inches, but he's getting low. He's strong. They're banging. AJ's got nothing. He tries it again. He pokes the ball away. AJ recovers. He tries it again, and ultimately AJ has to pass out to Darius Acuff, who misses a jumper. And you kind of saw his ground coverage being able to go from the paint out to the wing and recover. And then you see that time and again on how much ground he's able to recover, then how physical he is. And the switchability and his defensive versatility in guarding multiple positions. He spent time on Caden Boozer. He spent time on Cam Boozer. I watched one of the games. He was guarding Caleb Wilson. And like, I love that he guards the dude. You know, like a lot of guys will rest on whoever else so they can score. This is a guy who he's a leading scorer in California high school history. But this dude will go seek out the matchup and he will guard. And I freaking love that about him. Now, you mentioned there are some areas he needs to improve. Sometimes he likes to cheat the passing lanes. That, you know, he has good recovery tools, but you gamble. Sometimes he can be a little undisciplined. He'll make some annoying mistakes, help off strong corner every now and then, not consistently, but every now and then. That defensive versatility, like he was playing drop against Caleb Wilson, who's, you know, 6'10", and he didn't quite know how to execute like the cat and mouse game with the guard. And maybe that's not something he sees all the time. But if you're going to guard up, you're going to have to do some stuff like that. It doesn't always finish with a high hand on his contest. But I also think that he's great, like rotating off the ball, and like he stunts and he recovers. So there's way more for me to like than the opposite. And I think in Baylor's no middle defense, he is going to be an absolute monster. Like he is going to be a monster in that defense as guys try to skip the ball to the weak side of the floor. I think he's going to come over from the weak side and contest at the rim. Like he is going to be really fun in that defense.
Yeah. Corey, for me, man, my biggest takeaway with him on the defense side of the ball is, number one, I actually think he's an extremely selfless defender. And what I mean by that is he's such a willing team defender. He's willing to make all the rotations, be there on time. He's willing to take charges. He's willing to be strong. He's willing to, you know, I just feel like he's willing to dive on loose balls, like willing to do all the dirty stuff and be a little extra to make his teammates better on the defensive side of the ball. And that really impressed me. Obviously, the tool set with him is awesome as well. Like the way that he moves laterally. Corey, earlier when we talked about offense, you talked about how he can get low with the ball. Mm-hmm. You see that on defense too.
Oh,
He's got a incredible low center of gravity where he's able to flip his hips, stay mobile, agile, but also because he's low, as you mentioned with the AJ vignette right there, like the way that he's able to stand up bigger guys because of how low and strong he can get is really, really special stuff. And I think, like before I mentioned, like he's like in my notes, I've compared him to like Kraven the Hunter, is because of like how ferocious he is. And it feels like he's hunting when he's on defense. And like the way you mentioned, he gets into the passing lanes, he really pounces into the passing lanes, and he can literally sniff out those steals, and he just gets going down the court. And I think with him, Corey, like overall, as exciting as a prospect he is, and sometimes it's a lot of the times when we're talking about guys that are at the top of the draft, we talk about like their offensive skill set. With Tounde, it's almost a 50-50 thing. Or maybe it's even like a 60-40 leaning towards his defense because of the type of defender that you're going to get from day one, right? Whatever team takes him, if he goes in the top 5, top 10, whatever question marks you might have about his offensive game, you know the type of defender you're going to get. And that's really, really exciting stuff. And so when we talk about Tounde, offense, defense, there's a lot of exciting stuff. Coming up next, we're going to cover some comps that I think are going to be really interesting for you guys as well. So for our listeners, we've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. So if you can, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Here's a special offer. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. So please make sure to go and fill out your survey today. Today we're also sponsored by FanDuel, and FanDuel, man, the NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't miss offer. It really is right around the corner, right? So right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel, I mean, look, as we mentioned, the NFL season's right around the corner. Now's your time. Put in your bets. And there's a lot of fun ones out there, divisional bets, MVP bets, rookie of the year, whatever you're feeling. I mentioned a couple podcasts ago, I think the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl, I think is kind of tasty. Maybe the Denver Broncos. Maybe you go crazy and you go, maybe this is the year that Justin Herbert makes that leap, and the Chargers with their rookie running back, they make a big run. Who knows, right? But whatever it is, make sure you go and do it as soon as you can. So ultimately, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Corey. It's our favorite time of every podcast. I'm really excited for this one. I got in my bag. I do the usual stuff. I've got my 90s guy. But Corey, I want to hear from you. Who are some guys that came to mind as you did your Tounde Yessoufou film breakdown?
Well, I mean, look, it's going to be a popular narrative, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention it. Aesthetically, he patterns his game after Anthony Edwards. So when you see him, you are going to think of Anthony Edwards. He looks like him. He wears the wristband, the number. Like, he is a disciple of the church of Anthony Edwards. And aren't we all? And so he plays like him, right? That is obviously a top tier outcome. Anthony Edwards is more explosive. And, I think at his best, like just an absolute two-way monster who has really developed his playmaking feel with still miles to go, and has helped lead the Minnesota Timberwolves to multiple Western Conference Finals appearances at such a young age. I don't think that you're getting the level of prospect of Ant. Maybe if Tounde was Anthony Edwards' age coming out of the draft, that would be more of a conversation, but he's a little older, right? So the polish not being there already, obviously I think that comparison we need to quell, even though aesthetically it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
As far as maybe more realistic outcomes for him, I thought of, if the shot comes along, maybe like a Dante DiVincenzo. Dante obviously is a phenomenal shooter, but like definitely more scoring tilted and two-way guy. But I think the guy that I really came across thinking that there's an outcome for, and I think I like him more than I did this guy as a prospect, is Benedict Mathurin.
Okay.
Who had some moments like in the finals, like through that playoff run, even though he wasn't getting consistent minutes, like you could tell, like with his athleticism, his two-way impact, his ability to get to the rack, while he wasn't consistent, because I think, that feel isn't always there. He has all these other tools that make him a worthwhile player to be on the floor given certain situations. And I think that's kind of where I look at Tounde as a potential, like not like a negative outcome. Like if there was an outcome where he just completely busted, I think maybe you're looking at like a Stanley Johnson type of guy. But I think Tounde works too hard.
Yeah.
And I think he fits too well into the modern game that he's going to find a way to impact basketball on the floor at some point.
That dude. The Benedict Mathurin one definitely is interesting to me. Corey, for me, if Anthony Edwards is like the high end comp, I have like a mid to high end comp, a guy that is very near and dear to my heart. But the reason why he came to my mind is because of the aggression that he played with. It's just like a quintessential two guard, but also was really dynamic in the passing lanes, ferocious defender. I don't think as muscular as Tounde, but also back then, just different nutrition, stuff like that.
Totally.
Guy came to mind for me was Latrell Sprewell.
Oh, yeah.
So just to really quickly, we'll just rattle off, 4-time All-Star. He made the All-NBA team in 94. He was All-Rookie, All-Defensive team in 93. I think stats-wise, obviously, he peaked when he was with the Warriors. But when he came over to the Knicks, and they made that title run in 99, and then he had like a little nice run with the T-Wolves at the end of his career.
Yeah.
Latrell was always a very fun, dynamic two guard that was a really good scorer, lights out in the mid range. Obviously, Tounde doesn't have that, but like as much as Latrell does, but different errors now, right?
Yeah,
And I
totally.
think Tounde very comfortable shooting from outside, but a menace in transition, a menace in the passing lanes. I thought maybe Tounde could be a modern day version of a Latrell Sprewell type of guy. So those are, Corey, I like the Mathurin comp. The Dante one really kind of threw me. Didn't even consider that one. I like that one a lot. And then Latrell, I think, is interesting as well. And I think, Corey, if we're talking about a guy who's going to go top 5, top 10 ish, right, around that range, then I think a guy like Latrell, who's a 4-time All-Star, made one All NBA team, I think is a fair comp. And so before we wrap, though, we do have one more word from Locked On. It's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside 2-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. As always, guys, want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Please make sure to lock in with us every single week. We have more awesome content for you guys. Obviously, when the season starts, we'll have even more stuff. But thank you, as always, for listening to us. I'm Albert. He's Corey. See you guys soon.